All right, welcome to our first feature match for week 6, which is the final week of this league, the Streets of New Capenna League. So, we are watching Emmett, who I'm watching from his point of view, who's just deciding on what card he's going to bottom from his mulligan, against Caleb, who Coleman's going to be looking at his hand. So, both of these players have really excellent records so far, 18 and 7. So they're on pace. If they continue the pace that they've been going at in the previous weeks, they are on the way to top 8, perhaps. What's going on in Caleb's hand?
Well, we had the two. We had the fetch land to start, and we have tramway station a swamp, shambling gas, corrupt court official, hold for ransom, sleep with the fishes, and then drew a tramway station for the turns.
All right. So the last time we saw Caleb, he was playing a 5-color deck. I think since then he's got down to 4 colors. I think his red cards are just his 2 copies of Hostile Takeover. I think the rest of his deck is base Obscura. I know he was running 5-color before for Souls, 2 copies of Soul of Emancipation. So Emmett's figuring out which lands he wants to play between his Broker's Hideout and his Botanical Plaza and his Obscura Storefront. He's going to be a bit slow to start here. He has only tap lands, so next turn he can't even play a Rooftop Nuisance if he wanted to. He has an Echo Inspector that if he draws an untapped land, will be able to play on turn 4. Otherwise, might be a bit slow with that as well. He does have a Depopulate, though, so if Caleb does get out in front here, which, with these 2 1/1s, he's not really making much headway, but he does have a Depopulate, which might come and play later in the game. Emmett does have a good draw here, which is an Exotic Pets, which he can use to either, trade with both of Caleb's creatures, or one or both, or just to start getting in damage of his own.
Yeah, so we've had some pretty good draws over here. I mean, we keep drawing tap lands, but we've drawn Corpse Appraiser and a Psychic Pickpocket in the last couple turns. So, now our hand is clean of lands, and Caleb's trying to decide between just passing because there is no fodder for the Corpse Appraiser yet. So, there's no reason for that.
Yeah, so he does have some. You said he has at least 1 white card that he can't cast yet, right?
Yeah, hold for ransom.
Okay, so he's not on his white yet, but he'll still be able to cast some of his cards. So Emmett has decided not to trade with these 1/1s here and just to produce these fish so he can start attacking. So he's drawn. Interesting. He drew a Giada, and he's holding up a negate. I'm not sure what he wants to negate at this point in the game. There's not that many non-creatures that can come down that really dominate here, outside of planeswalkers, I guess. Because he doesn't need a counter removal because his creatures don't matter that much yet. He could have just played his Echo Inspector, made use of all of his mana, and dug a little deeper in his deck for something useful. But he's decided to just play the Giada here. Maybe he's hoping to draw some angels, or just the 2/2 lifelink is, he wants to start gaining life. Yeah, negate is usually a lot more useful later in the game. Like on turn 5, not that many things you're going to nab with a negate unless you have a threat. Unless you have a threat you want to protect in play. So the Psychic Pickpocket is likely going to bounce. Well, we'll see what Caleb decides. I was assuming it would be a fish, and he's correct. Yeah, so he's attacking with the Shambling Gas, which can give the Giada -1/-1 if it dies. So Caleb does have his white source now. Might decide he wants to hold for ransom one of Emmett's creatures here, since he's about to play an Echo Inspector. What's left in Caleb's hand after the hold for ransom?
Corpse Appraiser and a Sleep with the Fishes.
The Corpse Appraiser, yes. Which there's no. Still don't believe there's any creatures in the graveyard. Yeah, so one of these flyers might draw out one of those auras from Caleb's hand to not get attacked repeatedly in the air.
Yeah, especially if it's a 3/4 flyer after the discard. I definitely see him, hold him all down so he can still attack with the pickpocket.
Yeah, so Emmett's mulling over what he wants to discard here. I think he's settled on a rooftop. Yeah, rooftop nuisance, not being that much of use right now. Still holding on to that negate. Uh, you know, I don't know how much he's looked at Caleb's deck because, or his list because the pools are public. So if he has, he's probably noticed the 2 copies of Hostile Takeover. Maybe he's brought in the negate in advance, you know, with that in mind. Or negate is just also a fine card to have in your deck. So Caleb's decided that he's just going to use his removals here on these flyers, and he's going to start getting in for a bit more damage. Yeah, so Caleb's last card in hand is the Corpse Appraiser. Him putting those auras on Emmett's creatures doesn't really help get creatures in the graveyard, but this will. So the depopulate is coming down here. Emmett only lost his fish. Caleb lost all of his creatures. There was only one real big threat there, which was the 3/2. The rest were all small, but still making use of his depopulate to his advantage. And now the Corpse Appraiser can come down. And
So the choices are Fiend's Informant, Illuminator Virtuoso, and a Tenacious Underdog.
right, so 3 little creatures here. So he has opted to take the Raffine's Informant, it looks like, putting the Underdog in the graveyard where it likes to be, and the Illuminator Virtuoso figures it's a bit small at this point if he doesn't have a way to target it. Raffine's Informant can dig him down 1 deeper.
All right. Keeping the person on.
Yeah, so in comes the Underdog. Emmett's likely to... Well, we'll see what he decides to do this turn. He's most likely going to play his Jewel Thief and hold up the negate that he has in hand.
He's deciding if he wants to play this land. He's going to hold it so he can double spell and get the Raffine's Informant down.
Yeah. So this is just going to be a mill here effectively, but it does make the Raffine's Informant bigger. So he just happened to have a non-land on top, which meant that the Raffine's Informant is a 3/2. Yes, this is going to be difficult for Emmett to fight against, but he did just drop Backup Agent. He could have put the counter on the Jewel Thief in order to assure that he has a blocker, but that would be weak to a removal. If you remove the Jewel Thief, you'd just be left with a 1/1. So here he went for a bit of a safer play as just having creatures that can trade. No creature that's bigger than Caleb's, but making sure he didn't get killed by a removal there. Yeah, so this Echo Inspector is going to come down, but it's he's going to need to get a counter on it, or else it's going to be trading with that Tenacious Underdog again.
The Blitz card that Caleb drew was a Psychic Pickpocket, so this is the pressure's going to keep coming.
Yeah, so it's an interesting spot here for Emmett because he has a land and he just drew a Nimble Larcenist with the Echo Inspector, but I think he has to discard the Nimble Larcenist to make his Echo Inspector a 3/4. But unfortunately, the Pickpocket is going to come down to make life a bit more difficult. But this was the correct play here, just so he has something that can block the Tenacious Underdog and not trade with it. So yeah, Pickpocket's going to come. It's going to bounce the Echo Inspector. And he does have 4 mana left over to Blitz. So Emmett's going to untap at 1 mana here. Or at 1 life, sorry. And I don't think there's much you can do, particularly because even if he deals with what's on board, there's the Underdog in the graveyard. So he's gonna do a loot here, see if there's a miracle card. But even Raffine the Scheming Seer, which was his draw from the from the Connive, is not gonna be enough here against the Underdog that's gonna come out of the graveyard. Yeah, so we're gonna head to game 2. So I haven't seen much of Emmett's deck at all so far this league, but he's playing what appears to be mostly white-blue, but it is a broker's deck. He does have a good amount of green cards. He's base white-blue, though, And he also has a few black cards. As we saw that game, he has a Raffine, he has a Nimble Larcenist, perhaps others. But he's base white-blue, has a fair share of green cards, and then looks like about 2 black cards. So,
So
any...
Caleb's only his only red cards are the 2 hostile takeovers and the Corpse Appraiser. So real light splash at the top of his curve. He's got an Ugin, which I didn't know he had.
Yeah, I
That
believe
must be
it's
nice.
the Ineffable, right? The one from War of the Spark?
Yes, the
The 6
ineffable.
mana one, yeah. So that one is game breaking. I mean, the 8 mana one is game breaking too, but the 6 mana one gets cast more often when it's in your hand. What else is he thinking about there? Emmett
He's
hasn't
just
made any moves.
kind of looking through his cards. He hasn't made any changes yet.
Yeah, Emmett hasn't. He hasn't considered any sideboard options yet. Looking through his list, what might be good against what he saw there. He looks like he's taking out 1 copy of Majestic Metamorphosis. He has 2 copies of that, and he's bringing in a Hold for Ransom just as to stop perhaps the early threats. You know, Hold for Ransom is a strange card because you want to put it on like a 2-drop or a 3-drop. So early in the game, so you don't take damage from it, and then later in the game, it's less desirable that they're going to spend 7 mana to free it. When an opponent plays an impactful 6-drop and you hold for ransom it, there's a good chance they're just going to, play a land the next turn and free it right away if they can.
Yeah, save your turn.
Yeah,
Basically.
so it's strange because like usually pacifism scales. Like the later you wait with it, the better creature you're going to hit. But in this case, this is a pacifism with a downside. So normally you do just want to put on those 2 and 3 drops because it's unlikely that they're going to be wanting to unlock it and attack or be able to attack with it late in the game. Whereas, like I said, with a big 5 or 6 drop, it's going to be 1 or 2 turns and they'll probably be able to pay for it right away. Right? If they cast a 6 drop, they're going to have access to 7 mana soon, if not already. So that was his only change there. Looked like.
Caleb just ran it back. I do like the flavor of that card, though. It actually is holding for ransom. You do get your card back eventually, and they have to pay for it. So kind of it's fun.
Yeah,
But
and if it's a lame target, the ransom just never gets paid. So the better target you put it on, the more likely the ransom is to get paid.
Caleb's kept a really interesting hand. He has 4 tap lands, plains, and 2 murders.
Yeah, so Emmett's had to. Did he mulligan? Yes. So he did have to. Yeah, so he did have to mulligan again. He's played a Jad on turn 2, which is good. His follow up is likely going to be the exotic pets. He has a Jewel Thief that he can't cast yet. He's drawn an Elspeth, which is a good card. We'll see if it gets to the point where he can deploy that on time.
So Emmett's got a swamp. Did he side in some black cards, or you had those before?
No, he had a Raffine and a scheming Nimble Larcenist in his deck. He discarded the Nimble Larcenist to connive last game, and he had the Raffine right at the end on the turn he was losing. So it's a light splash, but here it might be costly if he doesn't find his green source because that Jewel Thief can really help him out here. So the Corrupt Court Official is gonna come down. He's gonna cast an Exotic Pets. I figure he's just going to discard the Jewel Thief since he can't cast it. Yeah, he's going to keep his Elspeth and his Majestic Metamorphosis. Yeah, so he suspects, yeah. So the Majestic Metamorphosis is being cast here, so he can draw a card, perhaps hit another land. So now this means that if he draws an untapped land next turn, he's going to deploy Elspeth. So what does Caleb have in his hand to potentially fight against
We've got 2 murders, and a Quasar, an island, a plains, obscure storefront, and a Jetmare's Garden. He's drawn a lot of lands, so I'm thinking he's probably going to hold that Jetmare's Garden and maybe cycle if the game goes that long, but he's going to lead with the Quasar.
Okay, so... Alright, so Emma's just going to play his Elspeth here, tick it up so that it's not in danger of dying next turn. And even if it gets attacked, it'll survive. It'll survive if it gets attacked. So he's deciding between putting it on a fish or the Giada, the angel here. I'm thinking the Giada because it already has built-in vigilance, so he doesn't have to give it the vigilance counter this turn. But I guess it already has lifelink and flying. So,
And I don't think it has
or no,
lifelink,
no, it
does
doesn't
it?
have lifelink. So you can put the lifelink at the +1 on Giada, and then it already has vigilance, so it can block the corrupt court official. Okay, so he's putting on a fish. I think either way, it's going to work out here. So Caleb's murders don't really match up well against these multiple little threats. You never feel good using murder on a fish, but if the fish gets big enough, it might warrant it.
So for the turn, we've drawn a card I'm not familiar with. It's Voracious Great Shark. Must be one of his historic stash cards.
Well, yeah, that's a big one. That's from Ikoria. Yeah, so that one's the 3 blue blue. It's a 5/4 flash, and you can play it, and when it comes in, it'll counter a creature and artifact. So that's that's a big one if he gets a second blue. Oh no, he does have the second blue. So yeah, that'll counter a creature or an artifact, and it's a 5/4. So that's a very good one. But like he's at 8, and Emmett has 5 and about to be 6 unblockable damage, and he has a backup agent in hand, so that's another damage. So he's he needs to answer some or all of
Yeah,
these
he's
creatures.
definitely thinking over if he wants to murder or if he wants to hold up the Great Shark. You know, what's if he's going to hold up the Great Shark?
Well, he could hold up murder. He could hold up one or the other, right?
Yeah, right.
He can see how this turn proceeds. So Emmett's drawn his forest, which he did discard the Jewel Thief earlier, so no green cards to play with it. Let's see what he puts the counter on this time. So backup agent is coming down. So Caleb could counter this, but if he does, that means he's definitely taking 6 damage and going to 2. So I don't know if he can afford to counter this. He will go up a life on his draw step from Queza, but I think the murder is more key here. His life total is low enough that he can't just take 6 this turn. Or 7 when he pluses the Elspeth. So I'm sure Caleb is considering exactly what I was mentioning, which is whether to counter this or not.
And go for it.
Okay, so he does counter it here, which means that the Elspeth will almost assuredly be dying, but this is putting him down to 2. He'll go back up to 3. But
Yeah,
this is a
he's
lot
going
of
to need
threats here. He needs one of his hostile takeovers, I think.
Blue Mountain.
Yeah, so if he had more black sources, he might be able to double cast 2 murders, but that's not an option here. So what else are his options aside from the murder that we know of, or multiple
We have
murders?
2 murders and 3 lands. He's going to go with Obscure Storefront.
Yeah, so he's dead then in that case.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so if all he has is murders and lands, then unfortunately he's not going to make it through this turn. So he'll get an attack here, Elspeth. I don't see the need to keep Elspeth alive here for Emmett. It's just like he already has damage on board. I mean, he doesn't know that. He could assume that Caleb's going to follow up with something impactful that will prevent him from dying. But we know that's not the case. But I don't think it's a big consideration here. The Elspeth has sort of done its job. We'll see if Emmett decides to keep it alive. If he keeps it alive, that will mean that he's giving Caleb an out here. If he throws one of his creatures in front of the Great Shark here. Right, so he has correctly opted to not throw his creature in front of the Great Shark. This basically means that Caleb needs like two answers or board wipe, but something that at least deals with two of these threats. So is Caleb gonna? Is he
I think he's
sacrificing his
cycling,
land? Oh no, he
cycling
is
land,
cycling.
yeah,
Yeah,
gain
so
life.
he does go up to 5, which means he won't die now. So the cycling here gives him something. Uh, yeah. So I don't think that was necessarily lethal. No, because he no longer had access to his murder. Yeah. So not drawing his board wipe. That was pretty much the only thing that he could draw there. Emmett fortunate to get his Elspeth on time despite the mulligan. So
Yeah, you really can't keep those kind of. I mean, Caleb's a great player, but that was a very slow hand to keep on the draw. You know, 3 or 4 tap lands and two
yeah,
murders and no creatures. That's
yeah.
an
Emmett
aggressive start.
Emmett did
That's
not
hard
show
to.
himself to be particularly fast in the first game, but he played a 2/2 flyer on turn 2 and then played 2 unblockables on turn 1 and then played a planeswalker that pumps them. So it was going to be a tough go for Caleb from the jump here.
Once again, no sideboarding from Caleb. We're going to go right to game 3 with this pretty great looking deck. So
Yeah. So Emmett is looking like he's taking out a psychic pickpocket, maybe to lower his curve. I think he might have brought in a second copy of Negate. He's also looks like he's taking out Ligrella the Magpie. Maybe he figures all of Caleb's stuff have like enter the battlefield effects. So if Ligrella goes away, he gets back his creatures that can accrue value.
what do you think about that, Richard? Do you think you would keep a hand, like 2 murders and both your black sources are tapped, no creatures on the draw?
Um, I don't think that's the worst thing. I mean,
Yeah.
murder is good. It's just these days the creatures in draft are unlimited. I mean, we're playing sealed are just so much better than they used to be. Like all these creatures get you value somehow. Whether it's they make a token, they draw a card in some way, they get a card's worth of value. It's and the creatures just keep getting better. Like we see, like Inspiring Overseer now. Like we keep seeing the creatures get better. The removal's not really getting better, and like you never get 2-for-1s removals at common anymore. Like you don't see a card that says destroy 2 creatures at common. Like it's just there's some cards that if you position them right, there's certain instants and tricks and things that might function that way, but you don't just see a card that just says straight up, deal 3 damage to 2 targets, kill 2 creatures. But all the creatures get a card's worth of value. So the removal is just like falling behind. So even though the rate is good, like we see, like murder is a very good rate, 1 black black, it just still doesn't match up because the creatures are all worth more than a card now, or a lot of them are. So Emmett's kept a hand here without white. He's going to need to draw a white source in order for this hand to be functional. So he's got a Broker's Hideout. So next turn he'll be able to start deploying his white cards, of which he has many in hand. He has the Giada, Backup Agent, Mage's Attendant, Buy Your Silence, and then he has 2 blue cards, Negate and Echo Inspector. So what does Caleb have going on?
Well, he's fetching a swamp, and he has a knockout blow, a nimble arsonist, which is what he needed for the swamp for. That's his next turn play, and then some removal with sleep with the fishes, running out of town, and then at the top, psychic pickpocket.
All right, so he's got some plays coming up. Emmett has drawn a Depopulate, so if Caleb's board gets a little too scary and he gets another white source, he'll be able to cast the Depopulate. He's gone for the Mage Ascendant here, which is pretty decent board presence.
Wondering if the Nimble Arsonist is just going to snipe that out of the hand.
Yeah, if the Nimble Arsonist comes down, it's likely to take the Depopulate away. Um, can't really see him thinking that he would rather Emmett have a Depopulate than a Negate or a Buyer Silence. I think he's going to settle on Depopulate, but we'll see.
It is kind of funny to compare those two cards in his hand right there. Buy your silence, sorcery, 5 mana, just to exile one creature
Oh,
and
yeah.
give them a treasure, and
Yeah,
then a deep pocket to wipe the board for 4 mana.
yeah. I mean, sometimes you just got to play Buyer Silence if you don't have enough removal. It kills everything. There's a lot of enchantments in the set that run away with the game.
It's true.
You have your Broker's Ascendancy, Rabble Rousing, Fight Rigging. If somebody's playing, there's a lot of people playing green-white base with the Ceremonial Groundbreaker that just runs away with the game. Sometimes you just need, even though it's a really poor rate, sometimes you just need to get that off the board and have a way to do it.
To not kill a bad all his colors, just still looking with the knockout blow, sleep with the fishes, run out of town, and psychic pickpocket.
Yeah, so Caleb's got a lot of interaction. Emmett's not really going to be producing many threats. Like, even when he does get his land situation sorted out, he's still just going to be playing, like, one thing per turn. He's gone with the Giada here, which might get bounced. He might just opt to bounce the token. We'll see.
So for the turn, we drew the Fall of Lord Kondo, which is the Kamigawa saga that can exile, and then for the Knive, we drew the Yugen. So he's got a pretty tough decision to make on what to discard because all his cards are pretty good quality right now.
Which one did he just draw?
Yugen, the Insufferable.
Okay.
He's 1 mana away from casting that. I'm thinking he's probably going to, after what he's seen in the other games, he's probably going to ditch the Fall of Lord Konda just because Emmett only has Echo Inspectors that are costing 4 mana.
He saw Echo Inspector. He saw the Strong Arm at the end of the last game there.
It's true.
Not too much value. So now he can cast his Metropolis Angel using Giada as a mana source here. And if the Metropolis Angel survives, it could draw a card when it attacks.
So Caleb is throwing one of his 2 copies of Hostile Takeover for the turn.
Okay. Not sure he needs it yet. He can just play the Fall of Lord Konda here to kill this Metropolis Angel. Because that Metropolis Angel does represent card advantage, which is something that may be able to pull Emmett out of his mana problems here, his card draw. Yeah, so he's playing his backup agent. He's just going to attack in the air. And he's passing. So the reason why he had priority there is because he has another copy of Giada. So technically he could cast it with the Giada now. So because the rest of his hand was all blue and white cards. All right, so Giada's getting slept with the fishes. So he does have a backup Giada, but I'm sure he'd rather draw a land. So he could play as Echo Inspector. So he has drawn the land here, which is also black source in case he draws one of his black cards. It looks like Caleb has the upper hand here with the interaction in hand, as well as the hostile takeover in case the board ever gets too scary on Emmett's side.
Yeah, the last turn he drew a Night Clubber, and so really looking good for Caleb. Lots of choices to make each turn.
Yeah, we didn't see too many 1/1s aside from the exotic pets out of Emmett, but a Night Clubber is always a good card to have. So now he's got a decision of what to discard here. I'm looking at either the Giada or the Buyer Silence. I mean, the Giada is good, but it's just a 2/2 for 2. He has the negate here. He might be thinking about getting rid of the negate. We know if there's a hostile takeover on the other side, negate might be something that he might be able to use to his advantage. So he's rereading Fall of Lord Konda to see if it does anything, but the second effect Did not do anything. And next turn, I believe the backside is a 1/3 defender.
Yeah,
Yeah, and you draw a card when it
one
dies.
three. Yeah, when it dies.
Yeah, so he's opted to discard the Jada here, figuring that it's just not going to be good enough here. 2/2 for 2, even though it's flying. This is not going to be what pulls him back here. Caleb being offered a chance to trade his fish for the backup agent. I would figure he would not take the trade. Yeah, so he takes one. Now he gets his 1/3, and if whenever he casts his hostile takeover, he'll get a card off of the fragment of Conda.
Yeah, for the turn we drew a tenacious underdog. So lots of action.
Yeah. So these cards that we have from the stash packs from other sets, they've been interesting. It's like a sprinkling, so it's not, they're not like, there's not too much of it, but it's a nice little sprinkling and a few little surprises when you see them. So yeah, he plays his tenacious underdog. Notably, he doesn't have the second black yet to blitz it, but it's still gonna affect the board here. Yeah, so Emmett's not really got all that much to do here. You can buy your silence, the 4/3, or the underdog, yeah, because it exiles. But he's still resolving to taking 5 this turn or chump blocking. Looks like he's gonna have a tough time coming back in this, because even if he does put together a board presence, we know Caleb has the hostile takeover in
Caleb
hand.
only drew 6 land. It's a tap land as far as headquarters, but can use the treasure to play again this turn if you want to get it down.
Uh-huh. Yeah, we'll see if he decides he needs it. Yeah, so there it is. Eugen the ineffable. So that is likely to bring this game to a close. Maybe not this turn, but very soon. So Emmett's drawn a Fierce Witch Stalker, which is a card from Throne of Eldraine, but the short of it is that it costs 2 green, so it can't be cast. Nightclubber's coming down, which is going to kill its backup agent and just make it very difficult for Emmett to proceed here. So he does have the exotic pets that he can flash in here. So one of them will be a 2/2. He can make sure he doesn't die here. But still not looking great. And as we saw, his depopulate was taken away from him. But even if he did have a depopulate, there's the problem of this planeswalker that's making 2/2s that draw a card when they die.
Planeswalker is incredible. He just drew his second hostile takeover.
Oh
so.
yeah. That planeswalker is completely unreasonable. The fact that it goes in every deck and it's colorless is just, yeah, it's completely absurd. So yeah, we saw the early mana troubles put Emmett behind. I think based on what we saw Caleb have, it was going to be a tough go anyway, but the mana problems exacerbated what was already going to be a tough road for him. So that's it for our first feature match, and we'll be back later with a second one.